Yeah, it's Bergen.
Yeah, a little bit more.
Balls, dicks, and balls.
All right, so hey, pod people, and welcome back to another episode of Big Bad Nonsense. This is our second episode. I am Sock. Sitting here in Europe and across the Atlantic, I have the golden brown and buttery, and next to some gravy, it's Biscuit. How you doing, Biscuit?
It's me. Good morning, everybody.
You're Italian now?
Yeah, that happened.
So should we call you Biscotti now instead?
No, I'm not really good with those things like doorstops.
Okay, simple enough. As I said, welcome back to the second episode of Big Bad Nonsense. We've made it to number 2, so we haven't slacked off. And we are now available on Stitcher, Stitcher.com. You can download our podcast there, or you can go to Apple Podcasts, or you can go and visit us via SoundCloud. Just search for Big Bad Nonsense. So that's great. We're out to multiple audiences now.
Yeah, and if anybody can show me how to fucking find us on iTunes, that would be great. Because the other ones I pulled off, but apparently that's above my pay grade. It is there, though.
It is there. It is 100% there. It's not even called iTunes anymore, though. It's like Apple Podcasts.
Maybe that's why I can't find it.
Maybe that's why you can't find it. I don't know. Do you have, like, iTunes or Apple Podcasts installed on your computer?
No.
Then you're not going to be able to find it, bro.
Well, everything's starting to come clear. I think we may have solved this one.
Oh, Biscuit. It's a very hot day here today in Slovakia.
It's a hot day every day here in the dirty South.
In the dirty South. What fantastic story could you tell me today to take my mind off the heat?
Well, we are going to be traveling to Denver for a little bit here. I was looking into some conspiracy theories regarding Denver International Airport that I am going to share with you today.
Have you ever
Not so
been
mu-
to Denver International Airport?
I do not believe I've even done a flyover there, no.
Not really, eh? Never been to Colorado, huh?
No, it's on the list, but I haven't gotten that far west very often. Tends to be something the other direction.
I've heard a bit about Denver International, like from other people, like, people who travel a lot, like myself. It's like we sometimes end up discussing like some of the worst airports we've seen. And although Denver, I've heard, is not the worst, I've heard it's quite a odd place in a way. Like they have a reputation for losing luggage or something like that.
Yeah, their luggage situation is pretty famously terrible that if the only thing that happens to yours is it gets lost, then you usually had a pretty good go of it because often it just goes off into the ether.
Into the ether. Okay, I had a friend who said his got shredded there.
Yeah, that too. I mean, there's all sorts of fun ways that you can end up not getting what you started with, but the current rendition, they have put an approach on it that they seem to be doing a little bit better. And it's definitely not the worst airport out there, but it's certainly one that has some stories.
Do these conspiracy theories in any way relate to their lost luggage?
Not really. There's one in the baggage area with some gargoyles and shit, but it's one of the more minor ones. Yeah.
Gargoyles. All right, I'm intrigued. Give it to me.
Yeah, so this airport has all sorts of symbols in it that people think are um, summoning, the space reptile Jews or Hitler or hell or what have you. There's a little bit of all of it there. It starts with things as simple as a terminal featuring a statue of Anubis, or is it Anubis, the Egyptian god of death. So little things like that, people start to get
Wait.
little
So
bit.
this airport has a statue of Anubis in the airport.
Yes, the Egyptian god of death.
Okay, now my first question would be why?
You're going to be asking that a couple of times before we're done today, I have a feeling.
Okay,
Uh,
do you have an answer for me that in any way relates to Why Anubis would be in an airport in Colorado?
Artists are fucking weird.
Because, like, this is the thing, right? It's like I've been to a lot of different airports, and I always try and analyze the statues that they have there. And, like, most of the times I'm like, what has this statue got to do with the airport? Like sometimes it's totally normal. Like, if you go to Albania or something like that, you get off in the airport and like it's like there's a statue of Mother Teresa, right? It's like, well, she's from there. It's like, okay, it makes sense. But then sometimes it's like you get statues of like, you know, eggs or something, and I'm like, well, how does this relate to your airport? Like, I don't understand. So Anubis, god of the dead, middle of Colorado, no pyramids there. I don't know.
Yeah, he's just kind of hanging out. And it's not by any means the most famous statue there. That would be one that's actually in the front of it when you walk in. It's a large blue horse that um, Anna Lee Newitz, a writer for Gizmodo, as well as many other writers that have touched on this story, have verified that one of the parts of these conspiracies and kind of weird, creepy background things that's actually true is this statue actually did kill its creator.
What? In what way?
He was trying to put the top part on it, and he fell, and it fell too, and smashy, smashy.
So the statue crushed him.
Yeah, it smashed his leg, and he bled out, essentially.
Okay, and what's the statue of?
It's a large blue horse.
Okay.
And yeah, so he gets crushed by it, and the commission for the airport, they're like, well, fuck it, we already paid for this thing. So they go ahead and they put it out there anyway. It's got a pair of glowing red lights for eyes, which theorists state were supposed to actually be laser beams, but that never ended up happening because the creator died before he could get to that point. What these laser beams would be for is your guess is as good as mine.
You're making shit up now. You have to be.
I'm just getting started.
So it's a big horse with glowing red eyes.
Yes, and the red eyes are explained by the father of the sculptor. He was like into building neon signs and shit. So it's supposed to be as simple as that, but once you get into certain groups of people, that was the start of laser death beams.
Okay. And is there some sort of connection between horses and Colorado in some way?
My best guess with it is it was mention of the Denver Broncos, who were the football team there, and blue is one of their colors. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I feel it's kind of an Occam's razor thing, and didn't really look into it much past that. The other explanations that I've seen are, horsemen, hell, etc., etc.
And do all the members of the Denver Broncos have laser eyes?
Not yet.
Not yet. They're working on it.
No. Right. That's coming up in the next collective bargaining agreement, I believe.
Fantastic.
So, like I said, I think that this is just a football statue. But the next guy we're going to get into, he would instead argue that it's because it's in a rearing up pose, and that'll make you think about cocks, which makes you convert to Satan. Obviously.
What?
So
a standing horse will make you think of erect penises and and make you convert to Satan?
Yes. Phallic images are going to convert you, and this guy, I encourage you to look him up. Anybody listening, you yourself, Sock. He's got a website, thirdeaglemedia.com. He's got a bunch of shit on YouTube. This guy is nuts. His name is William Tapley, and he refers to himself as the third eagle of the apocalypse, whatever the fuck that means. And he's got a half dozen or so videos about the art in the airport and breaking it down, and how, in short, Cox, dicks, Cox.
So wait, if he's the third eagle of the apocalypse, does that mean like he's bringing the apocalypse?
He's supposedly like a big Jesus loving guy, so it's an interesting name. It's kind of hard to tell on his website because it's got like that 1990s vibe where he chose a text and a picture background, and you can't even fucking read the text over the picture. But and he's a Jesus loving man.
Okay. And
So
and he's worried
yep,
about horses that remind you of penises.
there's dicks all over this airport, like everything.
Okay. So can you give me another example of where you can find dicks in Denver Airport?
Oh, I can give you a handful.
Okay.
Again, I'm not going to go through
That's
all of
quite a
them.
handful.
I encourage quite a
Ah.
I encourage people to look this guy up later on and watch these videos because I'm not going to get to all of them. But
Mhm.
for an example, there's one painting that has a now extinct bird in it called a Great Auk, AUK.
Mhm.
Um, Kind of looks like a penguin. That also has a little banner on it that has the scientific name, which is Alca impennis,
Mhm.
Impennis, which
Uh-huh.
Mr. Tapley like stops the script like record scratch right here when he gets to this, and it's like, whoa, that almost says penis. What the fuck? And goes into like it is no coincidence that the artist chose a bird that part of the scientific name sort of kind of but not really says penis. Satan.
Okay.
He will go on to show us an overview picture of the airport on a snowy day and point at a very long part of it, which he recurs, if I could talk, refers to as phallic. I
Uh-huh.
would refer it to it as lane for baggage, something that airport fucking needs, but
Mhm.
not this guy. Then he points to a couple of circular tracks in the snow as well and refers to them as a testicle area. Again, I would call it past that vehicles need in order for basic operations at an airport. But
Mhm.
to Mr. Tapley, our third eagle of the apocalypse, it's a big old cock and balls.
So the whole airport, like I guess viewed from the air, is like one giant dick?
To him, we will get to a different overhead interpretation of the airport that's even worse. But
Mhm.
yes, for Mr. Tapley, yeah, there's a huge dick is a large portion of the airport if you look over at.
The more you tell me these theories, the more I'm wondering what's the connection between dicks and Satan? Like, dicks equals Satan? You think of dicks, you think of Satan? Like, that's not what comes to my mind. Like, someone says, oh, Satan. I don't think, oh, dicks. You know, like, it's not.
Right. To him, yes. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. He's just kind of like dicks make you think about Satan and they convert you. And I'm the fucking third eagle of the apocalypse, so I'm right. And
Geez, this guy must have a terrible time when he goes to pee.
yeah, he's probably got like some kind of shield that he pulls down.
All
So,
right.
so needless to say, I think I've established at this point that this guy's nuttier than squirrel shit. But
Mm
even going on past the Cox, because he does transition away from that eventually. Like I said, he's got like 6 videos up about this place.
hmm. Mm hmm.
Um, he'll do other things, like he'll take a little logo printed out of the airport and turn it up upside down, and note that when you do that, it kind of looks like a 6. Satan.
Okay.
There's another painting which is admittedly kind of a weird painting. One of the murals that's put up there, but it's to loosely define what you're looking at. It's horsemen with a big scimitar on a horse, and they're swinging it. There's a building in the background that looks destroyed. It's not directly implied in the painting that big ass guy with a sword did it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really tell. It's just kind of destroying the background. Well, this, our Eagle friend says, was a prediction of 9/11.
Okay. Was it?
Because
I'm assuming the mural was made before 9/11.
it was prior to 9/11, yes. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but I did look at that. It was put up prior to 9/11.
Okay.
And, I mean, of course, 9/11, that's where we always end up ultimately with these kind of folks, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There are other murals in the airport that he explains predict the rise and downfall of Barack Obama.
Okay. I guess someone should
Yeah.
probably call him to task on that because Barack Obama's done now.
Yeah. I'm not sure you'd really be able to communicate too well with him on this because some of his reasoning on these, if you think the earlier stuff was a bit out there, one of his Barack Obama prophecies, and this is a direct quote from the video. If we look up here, we will see a leopard overlooking this whole scene. I believe this signifies Barack Obama being elected president.
Okay.
Because if you see a leopard on a rock in a painting, that's where you go right away. It's Barack Obama.
Why, it's as much of a connection as Satan and dicks, I guess.
I would argue that Satan and dicks make sense compared to this.
I guess. So
I
Barack
mean,
Obama's a leopard? I don't understand.
I don't either. He doesn't really go into these much in his videos. He's just like, and you can see Barack Hussein Obama appears a fucking leopard because I said so. Moving on. Here's some dicks, and that's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of how he goes about. So we'll move on from Mr. Tapley at this point, but as I've said multiple times already, I cannot recommend highly enough looking at this guy. He probably could be his own episode.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but going further with the murals here, who are all done by one artist, there's, I believe, 40 of them in the airport.
Mm-hmm.
There's been obviously many interviews here with the artist and people beyond the airport. One taken from an interview I read in a Thrillist article. They're talking about one of the murals, which is called Children of the World. It's expressing the artist's desire to abolish violence in society. You know, it's got all children, all different colors, sizes, wearing different garbs from, different cultures, blah, 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 all that lovey-dovey shit.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the artist and their words, their description of it is, no need for violence in the world. And crackpots take that, and instead of going with that artist statement, they think it's showing the collapse of civilization and genocide by the New World Order. So that's kind of the disconnect that we have going on here.
I'm going to have to look this mural up and stick it in the show notes because I can tell from your description, like, that's probably quite a stretch to get the collapse of civilization from it, from what you've
Yeah,
described anyway.
yeah, it's a peaceful scene. I mean, it's a bunch of kids. So a lot of these you will need to lay eyes on. In our notes that we put up, I will have links to the stories I looked at here, which will show some of it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but so we'll kind of move on from the art here, not completely. Gonna go into some other. I stretch to call them documentaries because that implies that there's some kind of research or professionalism or thought put into them. But videos online we'll go with,
Okay.
talking about, quote, strange coincidences and occurrences regarding the airport. One of the more well-known ones that I think's been promoted by like the Daily Show or something like that at one point said to go look at it. I don't have the name of who put it up right now, who the YouTube user is. I'll go get that and give it to you to put in the notes as well. I just got to find it again. But they have a 2-part video about strange occurrences and weird things at the airport, like I said, they start with, why was this airport built when Denver already had one? And that's like a boogie woogie woo for them, because nobody ever builds new shit, right? Like every sports team in existence, they get a stadium, they just fucking play there forever.
Yes, of course, right? It could fall to pieces around them and they still have to keep playing.
Yeah, but that's where we're coming from, though, is these people, their bullshit meter goes off when they see something being built when one technically already exists.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously they can stop right there. I'm already sold. They've convinced me. But they do go onward. And if you recall, I said earlier, the dick from above wasn't the only one we were going to get on overhead views here.
Okay.
There's a lot of these videos that say that the airport from overhead resembles a swastika.
Okay. Does it?
No.
No.
Most immediately proceed to show an overhead shot of the airport that demonstrates that they're wrong. Essentially, what they're going on here is there's some lines pointing in different 90-degree angles, and so something Hitler.
You know, runways, of course, right? Because nobody ever puts runways at 90-degree angles to each other.
Right. It's, you could maybe, if you really wanted to stretch, say it's like kind of a pinwheel sort of thing, almost. It's not even really that. Honestly, go on Google Images, look up the airport from overhead, and see for yourself. I mean, it's simply not fucking there.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, it's all this, what is it? What do they call it when people see things that aren't there, like pareidolia or whatever? And I just Googled, like, the airport map, and I'm like, I don't know, kind of, but, like, a swastika is, like, it's 8 straight lines. Like, I could throw paper clips on my desk and maybe kind of see a swastika on them, right?
Right, exactly. It's something that after you hear it, you can look and sort of see what they're going for, but in order for them to have that conclusion, they had to go into this hoping to see a swastika, or their brain was expecting to even make that connection. It's just not where a normal mind would go to.
Here's a piece of advice from me to, like, everyone who's looking for conspiracy theories. If the person who designed it wanted it to look like a swastika, they would make it look like a swastika. Like, you would look at it and say immediately, without a doubt, it's a swastika, right? Like, people don't put swastikas on things to be subtle about it.
Right, that's not really something that you half-assed. You either go all in on that or you don't.
Exactly.
And so the main video that I'm watching, that I'm referencing here anyway, with the swastika, they are far from the only one. But when they mention that and then they pop up a picture like, oh my god, it doesn't fucking look like one at all, they immediately and casually transition into the New World Order being behind the airport, because of course. They even go so far as to say that, quote, the general consensus is that the NWO runs it. That's news to me.
Okay.
And so how do they know that these are the masterminds behind the airport? Why, there's a plaque in the airport from when it was commissioned that says at one part New World Airport Commission on it.
New World Airport, New World Order? Is that what they're going with?
Yeah, the New World Airport Commission. So they see New World and just immediately shit their pants when those two words are put together. I mean, it's catnip.
Okay. I'm going to start up a restaurant called New World, and then people can call in and give me their New World orders. That was a terrible joke. Forget that.
That was brutal. No, you're keeping that. Just for everybody to remember what you did today.
Yeah. I'll live on in shame. Please continue.
Okay. So this New World Airport Commission, conspiracy theorists, they'll go on to tell you that this commission doesn't exist. and they are at present day correct. The
Mm-hmm.
minor detail that they leave out of this breakthrough that they've come across is that it fucking did when the plaque was created.
Mm-hmm.
So, why dwell on such minor things, I guess? But that seems like a bit of a gaffe.
Mm-hmm.
But if we keep going with this little area, there's a braille tablet alongside with this as well, and this is a good one. This is one of my favorite parts coming up right here. So this braille tablet, a lot of conspiracy theorists believe it's like a lock, it's like a remote control that if you punch a code in it correctly, it signifies to our alien overlords it's time to release the poison and bring the Earth population down to 2 billion people so as to better control it. So they have like a genocide controller in the middle of the airport.
In an airport in Colorado?
Yeah, isn't that where you'd put it?
In Braille? Like, what if some visually impaired person like comes along and accidentally kills like 4 billion people?
Well,
It's like I just wanted to read what they were talking about.
yeah, boy, is their face gonna be red.
Yeah, no kidding. Uh, uh, I'm not even gonna ask how they claim there's no point in even like asking for proof about that. Like I'm assuming it's printed on like metal or stone or something like that, right?
Right, it's one of those things that it's not really worth disproving. It's so bad shit.
Like this is like something out of an Indiana Jones movie. It's like if you push the characters on the stone tablet, you will unleash the, death machine or something. Like I don't know.
It will signify the space Jews that it is time.
Okay, okay. Does it go deeper than that, or?
Uh, there's more.
Okay.
There's most of it's like little things that people are looking at instead of going for the obvious answer. They're just like bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, there's one part of the airport. One of the panels on the ground, it's got a little mining cart design with AU and AG in it.
Mm-hmm.
Silver and gold,
Mm-hmm.
mining cart, fucking Colorado. All makes sense, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But people think the AU and AG do not signify those minerals. They're references to an Australian antigen that can wipe out the population, a form of hepatitis. Because reasons.
And uh, and they would print that on like
Yeah, just to fuck with everybody and like hang it over their head. And, like, by the way, we have this too, you fucks.
like I'm trying to understand their
You're
their
not going to.
no, but like if I was running like some sort of like sinister organization, right? And I said, yeah, our main goal is to, kill a bunch of people with like smallpox or something, and then in the I don't know, some airport somewhere, I said, okay, now let's put up a statue of an eel, and then we'll write smallpox on it. Like, why would I do that?
Yeah, you'd think you wouldn't just shove it in everybody's face. There might be a little subtlety to it.
Mm-hmm. Or
But
secrecy.
to some extent, yeah. But in here we have an antigen references on the floor. Um, mural about world peace is calling for the collapse of humanity. The building's a swastika and a giant cock. Um, Symbols around the airport are predicting the end of the world in 2012. That one took a bit of a hit once we got to 2013, at least you
Mm.
would think. But people still seem to support it, despite the fact that it didn't happen. But you get my point here. Everything is something. Nothing's just a doorknob. It's a doorknob to the fucking underworld. Like, everything has to be something here.
Okay.
The gargoyles at the baggage claim, which I loosely referenced earlier, they were put up by an artist. Those are agents of Satan as well, even though the artist says, I'm just making a quip. These would put on churches facing outward to ward off evil spirits and shit like that. I'm making a reference to how famously bad we are at protecting luggage. That's why they're in the baggage claim facing the fucking baggage carousels.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't accept that. It's Satan or reptile space Jews, or it's always one of those things.
Okay.
This There's so many things going on here, and I know I've been a little bit all over the place just because I can't possibly get to all of them. There's so many conspiracy theories here that at one point the airport itself put up a Christ, what's the word that I'm looking for here? Not a presentation, an exhibit. There you go. An
Mm-hmm.
exhibit in the airport, a conspiracy month that they called it, that they had like all sorts of videos and items and yeah, an exhibit just going over, kind of embracing all
They
this
ran
nut
with
bar
it,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, because at a certain point you have to, but they're going with the CEO of the airport when he's doing an interview, and this was done at this exhibit, and he just points to one of the videos they have running, which was from BuzzFeed. Go figure, such a pinnacle of fucking journalism and research would screw something up. But he points to a little video report that they did on the airport, and he's like, those pictures that they're using aren't even our fucking airport. So yeah, so you got all this stuff going on, and they've kind of embraced it for the most part. Um, there's a few they won't touch on. A lot of that has to do with the underground tunnels, which are where I'm gonna kind of finally wrap us up here.
Are these like tunnels to hell or something like that?
They're mostly FEMA concentration camps, Nazi tunnels.
Why is it?
Actually,
Why? No, no. Sorry if. Let me interject here for a moment. Why is it always
yeah,
FEMA?
because they did Katrina.
I. It's like I keep hearing all these theories. It's like, oh, FEMA death camps or like FEMA
Uh-huh.
concentration camps, but it's like FEMA. Like they show up after an emergency and
Eventually.
or eventually and like give out some water and stuff like that. It's like they're not even like why don't they choose like a more sinister organization like one that has guns like the FBI or something like that. It's like saying like oh the United States Postal Service has ballistic missiles like like why FEMA?
Well, it wouldn't even necessarily need to be a more sinister one. I would say a more competent one. I
Even
don't
that.
know what FEMA has shown us in recent history that would indicate they are in any way whatsoever capable of pulling such a thing off without fucking it up.
Hmm.
So it's the least of our issues here, but I do get why that one. It, it's like the Nazi thing as well. It's like, why is it always fucking Nazis? FEMA's kind of the same thing with these conspiracy theories. Um, so they both have their own little conspiracies here. The FEMA concentration camps, like Nazi concentration camps, where they're just killing motherfuckers. As far as FEMA's more of a slavery thing.
Mm.
Um, there's a few others, like there's a tunnel that goes all the way to Washington D.C. and blah blah blah, all this shit. They're underground tunnels for baggage and for moving baggage along. There's probably about 1,000 workers under there and during the course of a day.
Hmm.
And there's some storage as well. Like United used to store a lot of their shit there, but I mean that's all it is. It's baggage tunnels.
I. All right.
Yeah, I don't know, kind of left you hanging there, but the
Well, I mean, what more
the
can you say? It's like,
yeah,
okay, so there's a FEMA death camp under the airport. You walk around to collect your bags, and you will end up thinking about dicks, and you will convert to Satan. So, and just make sure you don't read the Braille on the way out unless you kill 4 billion people.
Yeah, and you kind of just look at the person and say, that doesn't sound true to me. Uh, but there have been a couple of rare instances where, like, a news station or a paper has gotten to do a tour and they've gotten down into the tunnels as part of it. It's such a wide area that they don't get shown all of it just because it'd be impossible to do a walk through the whole thing. But as I alluded to earlier, the airport, they've started embracing these nut job theories, and the guys down there do as well. It's been noted multiple times. There's actually a video you can find if you look hard enough on YouTube. But when they know that like a camera crew is coming, they'll like draw aliens on the walls and shit, and like put on lizard masks and like go scurrying around in the background of shots just so like this fucking lizard man goes running behind the camera. And so they have their fun with it down there as well. Um, so that's I didn't really know where to end this, to be honest with you, because you could just keep going and going
Well,
and going.
what have we learned
Um,
from this?
we've learned that there's somebody that believes everything.
I think we're just gonna have to leave it at that.
I don't know where else to go with it, though. One thing I will try to tie it together with is something that I think people should utilize on the internet in general going forward. This was coming from one of the higher ups working for Denver International Airport, representing them in the interviews I read. And like some of like the Nazi trafficking and stuff like that, those ones they don't play around with when they're making fun of theories. And their explanation for that, and again, I think people should take this to the internet as a whole, is because some conspiracies are worth debunking and some aren't. So keep that in mind next time you're arguing with Fart Hitler 69 on Twitter about Barack Obama blowing up Canada or whatever. I mean, some of this shit's just not even worth looking at, and know where that line is.
That's great life advice.
I tried to do something with it. Hey guys, it's Biscuit. There's no real easy way for me to tell you this, but every time you listen to us and you don't tell a friend or share a link or give a 5-star rating, I go outside and find the nearest living thing and start a fight with it. It's usually a puppy. I don't think you want that on your conscience, and I sure don't want it on mine. So, if you could please promote us to the best of your ability, I would appreciate it. And so would Spot.
Have you ever heard of Dr. Lewis West? Does that name sound familiar to you?
It does not.
No. Okay. Well, he is famous for quite a few things. Like because he did experimentation with LSD and things like that. He's kind of known among like the hippie movement and stuff like that. But also he testified at to the American Armed Services Committee or something like that about American soldiers who were captured in places like Korea. And they captured these soldiers and they had them record like these messages saying like I denounce the United States and I want to spread socialism throughout the world. And he was brought in to like say should we court martial these people or not? And he basically came out and said no, like these people were sleep deprived. Uh, you can't trust what they were forced to say. It's like they were under complete duress and things like that. So that's one of the things he's famous for. Another thing he's famous for is testifying at the trial of Patty Hearst, who is a bit more well known in American culture. She was captured by a left wing paramilitary organization, and she was kidnapped originally and held for ransom. And then she eventually joined the organization and then started robbing banks with them. So, so funny how that works, right? So basically, he was there to testify at her trial to say that.
I love that, though. She's like, you know what? Actually, this looks fun.
I, well, you know, it's one of those cases where like he testified that it was like Stockholm syndrome, right?
Right.
Like,
Right.
you know, she was captured by them, she was put under all this stress, and she eventually sympathized with her captors and stuff like that. Like, there's
Right.
footage on there's footage available and like pictures from security cameras of like her standing there holding a rifle or something, like robbing these banks, right? So she like fully participated in it. You know, a bit controversial at the time, but basically he testified to say like, you look, you know, she was put under stress, and I think she still went to prison for it. I don't know. I'll have to check that, but I think she still went to prison for it, but not for a very long time anyway. But neither of those are the main story that I wanted to bring up with you, the main connection, the main nonsense, if you will, to do with
Hmm.
Dr. Lewis West. Uh, so he was all about using LSD in experiments. Like this is the beginning. It's like before LSD was like outlawed as a recreational drug. Scientists were still free to test it and things like that. Now, Biscuit, if you were a science guy and I said, "Hey, do some science with LSD for me," what would you test it on?
Myself.
Okay, other than yourself, because like scientists did do that, of course, right? Like they took the
Yeah.
drug themselves.
I don't think I would start by giving it to humans. I think I'd probably go a little bit further down as a starting point.
Hmm. So mice.
Mice seem to be the calling card for most of this shit, yeah.
Yeah, definitely, right? Like that would be my thing too, right? It's like tested on a small animal, right? So and like LSD was tested on mice, it was tested on rats, it was tested on cats. But Dr. Lewis West, like he tested on an animal which was really unusual, and I just love it if you take a guess at it. Just take a stab at it.
I want it to be a giraffe so bad.
Uh you're getting close. It's a zoo animal.
So I'm in the ballpark. Okay. Let's go with panda.
I would pay money to see a panda on
Yeah,
LSD.
I'm just going with what I'd like to see.
Yeah. Okay. The animal's name was Tusko.
Okay.
That should tip you off right there.
So an elephant?
Yes, they tested LSD on an elephant.
That's pretty fucking good too. I gotta hand it to.
Yes, I like you know like if you really wanted to cause chaos, it's like, hey, what could we give this drug to? It's like an elephant seems like the least sane thing that you could do, right? It's like if you were a scientist out to like create entertainment, you would go for an elephant. If you were a scientist out to do some
I
real
mean,
science, not the best choice, I think.
was what he was trying to create like the hardest animal to control?
Well, actually, the thing is, he wasn't going out to test LSD. Like they knew about the effects of LSD, and they knew about the effects on animals. They were trying to trigger the elephant. So the name of the elephant was Tusko, right? Which is a really uncreative name for an elephant. Like there's been so many. Like if you search Tusko in Google, you can find there's so many captive elephants that have been called
Yeah,
Tusko. It's like
yeah, that slightly above elephanty.
yeah, exactly, right? Like it would be like if you had a giraffe at your zoo and you said, "Let's call it Neko." Actually, I wonder how many zoos actually go the full mile and name like their rhinoceroses horny.
That I would respect that.
I would respect that, but of course, no one's gonna. I'm gonna have to search for that afterwards. But anyway,
I would be
elephant.
careful with that Google search.
uh, yeah, you're right. I'm not gonna search for it now. That's. I'll just leave that out. But but elephants. they have this hormonal change. Like basically elephant puberty in a way is the best way I can describe it. It's not exactly like puberty, but they go through this stage called must. It's spelled like musth, right? But it's pronounced must, and it's where they basically get all these hormones flooding into their body, and they become really aggressive, not just to people, but also to other elephants. Like they're just as likely to attack a female elephant as they are to try and mate with it and stuff like that. So it's like they basically go crazy with hormones.
Okay, so we're not just giving LSD to a elephant. We're giving LSD to a fucking elephant that's hormonal.
Well, no, they were trying to trigger the hormonal response.
Why would you want to do that?
Well, because that's the thing, right? Even now, apparently this state isn't very well understood, right? Like they're not
Okay.
sure exactly why elephants go through it, right? Like it's not really a mating thing. It's not necessary for it to happen. Like elephants will mate with or without this must trigger or whatever, right? They'll do it to any receptive female apparently. So they said we don't understand it, and like apparently elephants like they secrete this goo out of their heads from these like special glands, and they thought if we can trigger this state of aggressive behavior and then maybe get his glands to secrete this goo, we could take a sample of the goo and then we could study it better.
Fair enough. I've always wanted my own elephant goo.
Yeah, pretty much, right? So it's like they're like, how can we trigger this? And like they immediately go to say like, let's give it LSD and see if we can trigger this state in elephants. Like why they would do it that way, I don't know. Like my first, like I'm not a elephant scientist and elephantologist, pachydermist or whatever they're called, but like I would say, well, why not just give the elephant like a bunch of steroids or something, right? Like, why would you go for LSD? But this is the path they chose.
Yeah, I mean, like, tell it a racist joke or something. I mean, you can start a little lower than LSD.
But that's exactly what they did, right? They said, okay, we're going to give LSD to this elephant. This elephant is named Tusko. He's an elephant at the Lincoln Park Zoo in Oklahoma City.
See, that would work right there. Just go up to it and remind it. Just be like, your name's Tusko. And it'll probably be like, fuck!
uh, yeah, I guess so, right? If
That set me off.
well, this was their conclusion, right? They were going through this experiment. They said, let's give LSD to the elephant. Let's see if we can trigger this, and then if it works and it starts shooting the goo out of its head, well, it doesn't shoot out of its head, but if it starts secreting the goo, then we'll take a sample of it and we can study it. So they gave him 297 milligrams of LSD. Now, here's where the sort of controversial aspects of the experiment start. Well, actually, no, it started with giving an elephant LSD.
That's yeah, I was gonna say.
But here's where like the next controversial aspect comes along is like how much LSD should you give an elephant? So like
The age-old question.
right? So uh I've read a lot of different things online, and they debate over like how much LSD this was exactly. Like apparently it's enough to give like it's 1,000 recreational doses for an adult human, or it's 50 times the amount required to cause permanent psychosis in humans, and all this stuff. But basically, it was a lot, and they didn't account for like elephant's brain size in relation to its body, or all these other things. All these other things you're supposed to account for when you give a drugs to an animal instead of a human.
You would think that'd be part of the checklist, yeah.
You would hope, right? You would hope, right? So they say, let's just go for it. Let's take this huge dose of LSD. They load it up into one of those like tranquilizer dart style things, not with tranquilizers, but with LSDs, and they shoot it into his butt.
Hmm.
Yeah. So things go wrong
You're
quickly?
kidding.
No joke, right? No joke here, right? Things go wrong relatively quickly. Like, not wrong in sort of the disastrous sense, but like wrong in the sort of point where people should have said, we shouldn't have done this experiment. Like, he didn't really become aggressive or anything like that. It didn't introduce a state of must or anything like that. Basically, he became agitated, and his girlfriend, who was in the same enclosure with him, he had a girlfriend named Judy. I don't. That's strange, right there. It's like, let's just leave, another elephant in when we give LSD to this elephant. But
Just gonna go shove this up his ass if that's cool.
well, he became like stressed, and she came over to comfort him, and then basically he trumpets a couple of times. He falls over on his side, then he craps himself. He just takes like a big dump, and then he basically starts having a seizure.
Whoops.
Yeah. So clearly, giving an elephant was like LSD is not a good idea, right? So it didn't. It wasn't even entertaining, really. Like, it's like, hey, think of all the crazy stuff that could happen if we give LSD to an elephant, right? Nothing really crazy happened. He just falls over, craps, and then has a seizure.
Yeah, I wouldn't have needed to give an elephant LSD to know that I probably shouldn't be doing that. But these are different times, different ways of analyzing things. So,
well, it's the '60s, right? They're like, let's just do whatever.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Tusko did not survive.
Yeah, really took the wind out of this one, didn't you?
Tusko did die. But here's where the next controversial part comes in, right? So it's like Dr. West sees this elephant, having a seizure on the ground, and he's like, so he administers these antipsychotic drugs to try and, relieve his seizure. But he issued this drug called promazine. Promazine. He issued an antipsychotic drug, which was experimental at the time, right? So it wasn't even really clear that this drug was a good idea. And
why fucking start with good ideas now?
Yeah. No kidding, right? And like that kind of worked for a bit, but then, he was still like sort of in this comatose state, so they gave him some other drugs, and then he eventually died. So it's like a lot of people, said that this basically, was it the LSD that killed him, or was it like the drugs that they gave to counteract the LSD? Anyway, the main point is at the end of the experiment, like, Tusko is dead, and I love this statement from Dr. West. Is like, it appears that the elephant is highly sensitive to the effects of LSD.
I would say death is a adverse reaction. Yeah. You can't sneak anything past this guy.
Yeah, no kidding, right? But do you want to hear the craziest part about this?
Of course.
Is that one of the things that scientists love to do is, like, when you do an experiment, other scientists have to be able to repeat it.
Oh, good.
So this experiment was no exception. Someone repeated the experiment.
Right, because what about killing an elephant and having to clean up a bunch of elephant shit wouldn't appeal to you?
Well, it wasn't repeated by Dr. West. It was repeated by Dr. Ron Siegel, I think is how you pronounce his name. He did it like a little bit later. This was in the 1980s now. Now, why someone thought this was a good idea, I don't know. But they seem to be convinced that, like, it wasn't the LSD that killed the elephants. It was the drugs that Dr. West gave to try and revive the elephant after they gave it LSD.
Oh, brother.
Funnily enough, though, the second experiment didn't have these tragic consequences. Like, you can read, like, I looked up the whole paper written by Dr. Siegel about this experiment that he did, and he took two elephants this time. He took a male and a female. He gave them different doses of LSD. He didn't inject it directly into them. He put it in their water. Actually, this was kind of like, I thought this was kind of cruel. It's like they didn't give the elephants water for like 12 hours, so they would be really thirsty, and then they gave them a bunch of water with LSD so they would drink it all.
I mean, that's kind of fucked up, but
Yeah.
drink up, bitches. I dip my butt in it.
Well, like, I guess, right? It's like if you say, we got to make sure these elephants take this LSD. That's not even a sentence I should have to say. We have to make sure the elephants consume all of the LSD.
Quickly, there's no time. Get the drugs in the elephant, stat.
Right, well, because I guess there's a drastically different effect, like, between, injecting LSD directly into your bloodstream versus, like, taking it orally. Right? And like even people who do it recreationally, like you don't hear about people like shooting up LSD. They drop acid or whatever. They put it in their mouth.
Right.
So I don't know. I guess this seemed more logical to him. And from what I read of the experiment, right? Like the elephants, seem to do like a little bit more weird stuff than they normally do, and then they recovered. It didn't kill them.
Well, that's a better result already.
Yeah, I definitely recommend the paper put out by Siegel because, like, how do you judge an elephant's behavior? So basically, they, went and observed. It's like, hey, how many times do they flap their ears, or how many times do they shake their head, right? And they count all this, and then they give them LSD, and it's like, okay, well, let's count how many times they do it now. It seemed that most of the things they did was like rocking and swaying, like moving back and forth like, whoa, I'm on acid.
Hacky sack.
Pretty much. I mean, there's not really much else to say to that experiment, except that, this guy in the 1960s gave a bunch of LSD to an elephant and it had a seizure and died.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
I mean, what have we learned from this? I mean, I don't know, right? You would think that, from the first experiment, people would have learned to say, maybe we shouldn't give LSD to elephants. But then they went and repeated the experiment, so...
What we have to do is put it in their water and deprive them. My God, it's brilliant. Let's get these elephants high as shit.
I don't know. It's like... Actually, the interesting thing about this is that about a year after, Tusko's big trip, they actually produced a book, like a bunch of medical ethicists produced a book. I forget what it's called. I've got it written down here somewhere. It's like
Tusko's big trip.
Actually, several of
it like a children's book.
Well, it's like, what else could you call it, right? It's like
Tusko's big dump.
Now you've got me imagining like a kindergarten teacher, like sitting all the children. It's like, now children will read Tusko's big trip. It's like, Tusko was wandering around when one day a big syringe hit him in the butt. Oh, God.
Okay.
Tusko was not happy at all. Okay.
His touch began to rumble.
His good friend Judy came over to see what was wrong.
Soon her nose answered the question.
Okay. I'm all right. Okay. Let's leave it at that. Oh, boy. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to the second episode.
You can do it.
Thank you for tuning in to the second episode of Big Bad Nonsense, where we explored Denver Airport conspiracy theories and Tusko's big trip. Please Visit us on Twitter at Big Bad Nonsense. You can download our podcast via Stitcher.com or Apple Podcasts, or listen to us on SoundCloud and YouTube. Big Bad Nonsense. Biscuit, anything you'd like to plug?
Just my new children's book, of course.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening.